everyone, and welcome to a new video. I thought I'd take the time today to just have a bit of a bookish catch up with you. I had some really exciting news recently, and that is that I got the first physical copy of my book, The Country Commonplace book. So I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be holding the book in my hands, and I think Bats would have just done such a gorgeous job. It's really beautiful. I love the way that you can open it flat, so it's just so nicely bound. And yes, I'm just totally overjoyed with this book. I've actually done a video that shows you more of a preview of the book. So I'll link that in the video description box and in the comments just below. It's on the pre-order page, so you can check the video out there. And that also reminds me that there are now only 50 copies left of the signed edition of the book, which I'm doing with Slightly Fox. They're very kindly selling signed pre-orders, but we're having to cap the number because I'm going to have to go to London in September and sign all the copies, and then they'll send them off. So there are only 50 available to get. So if you have been wanting a signed copy, then I do recommend getting it sooner rather than later. But I'm just so thrilled. So that was a very big piece of news for me anyway, and I'm just, yes, overjoyed. But I also wanted to tell you a bit about the books that I have been reading, and as well as a few more titles that I've added to my shelves lately. So what I'm reading at the moment is Dear Miss Lake by A.J. Pierce. This is a proof copy. The book is actually coming out on the 3rd of July. But as I'm sure many of you know, I'm a huge fan of the Emmy Lake books by A.J. Pierce. These are stories set during World War II, and they follow a young female journalist. And they're just so full of humour, but also joy and comfort. They're always very much about female friendship and solidarity, and I just love these books. This is the last one in the series, so I've been very excited to read it, and I was thrilled to get a proof copy so I can read it in advance of its publication. And I've just started it and I'm really enjoying it. It starts in such a lovely way with a special proposal and a picnic, and then the whole Women's Friend magazine decides to move to Bunty's grandmother's sort of country house for the summer, and it's just, yeah, it's just wonderful. So I'm so enjoying it already. And then I know that a lot of you like Mary Stewart and know that I love Mary Stewart's books. She wrote a lot of adventure / sort of thriller novels set in the 50s and 60s that often follow a young woman having an adventure, and there's generally a bit of romance in the books too, and I just really enjoy them. They're always set in interesting locations and they're just fun reads. But she also wrote a series of books all about Merlin and King Arthur. And I've been wanting to read these for a while, so I've read the first one in the series, which is The Crystal Cave. And this is all about a young Merlin. And it's just so well written. Mary Stewart's such a good writer. And I'm really, really enjoying this. It's set sort of just after the Romans have left Britain, and of course there's a lot of fantasy in this story, but I can also see that Mary Stewart researched the sort of time period that she was writing about, and it's just so vividly brought to life. So I'm actually really enjoying the series, and I look forward to reading all of them. But this is the first one, and I recommend it if you fancy a bit of fantasy, but sort of like really well written, interesting fantasy. Then this is brilliant. Another book that I read fairly recently is Lady Living Alone by Nora Lofts. And I actually picked this up because I read Bookish by Lucy Mangan, which I adored. I'm such a fan of Lucy Mangan's bibliomemoirs. The first one was Bookworm, which of course we did for the Comfort Book Club last September. I'd read it years before then too, so I've been recommending Bookworm for years. But her second memoir, Bookish, just came out recently. And I love this. This is more about Lucy Mangan's adult reading and goes right up to the present day, whereas Bookworm is really a memoir about her childhood reading. But I really love this too. And one of the authors that Lucy Mangan really praises in this book is Nora Lofts, particularly her historical fiction, which I haven't read, but I do want to read. But I remembered that I actually had a Nora Lofts book on my shelves, which I hadn't read yet, and that was Lady Living Alone, which is part of the British Library Women Writers series. Nora Lofts apparently wrote, I think, one or two more sort of thriller type books, and she originally wrote them under a pseudonym, under a man's name, but this was one of them, and the British Library have republished it using her name, and this I very much enjoyed. It's about a female writer, a middle-aged woman who in some ways is a bit of a scatterbrain, but she actually is a very, very good writer, and she loves writing, and she's made quite a bit of money through her books. But she has a sort of almost fatal flaw in her character, which is that she hates to live alone because she can't bear to be alone in a house when it's dark. It's just a phobia of hers. And this phobia leads her to employ a young man as a kind of housekeeper, and she doesn't really know anything about him. But a romance soon develops between them, and she ends up marrying this young man. From the beginning, or almost from the very beginning, the reader is aware that this young man has a very ulterior motive in marrying the heroine of this book. He's really only after her money. And as the novel progresses, you see how her life becomes more and more endangered. And there's a very dramatic ending, but it's still quite a satisfying ending. So it's just, it was actually, I did enjoy it, and it's definitely quite a fast-paced novel, I think. I think it's quite a page-turner, so definitely one that I enjoyed. And then this is a book that I read recently as well. It's The Book of Joy, and this essentially is a written account of a few days when His Holiness the Dalai Lama and the Archbishop Desmond Tutu met and held conversations on the subject of joy and how people could find more joy and more meaning really in their lives as well. And it's written with Douglas Abrams, who did a really great job, I think, in recording the conversations and also explaining to the reader the sort of context of this meeting and of sort of what occurred around the conversations as well. And these days, the news is so depressing. I think there's so much hardship and sadness in the world. I turned to this book, and I had to say it really, really helped me to remember that there is joy in the world, there is goodness in the world, and that also people are inherently good. And it's just such a inspiring, joyous read, and I really can't recommend it highly enough. If you feel in need of a bit more joy in your life or seeking ways to feel more joyful, then this book I think would really help. So I highly recommend it. And then a lovely summer read was The Hazelborn Ladies, Motorcycle and Flying Cub by Helen Simonson. This is set sort of over the summer of 1919, and it follows a young woman with a very uncertain future. And she is thinking she's probably going to have to take a job as a governess or something like that. But for this summer, she's been employed as a kind of companion to go with an elderly woman to a seaside resort. And while she's there, she meets a young woman who she befriends, and this young woman has sort of founded a motorcycle club for young women, and she's also founded a kind of delivery service that employs women. And it's just a really good read. I think Helen Simonson is such a great writer. This takes a very interesting look at the lives of women after World War One, how some of the freedoms that women experienced more during the war were being taken away again after the war. There's a bit of romance in this book too, so it's really interesting in terms of social history and women's history in particular, but also it's just a great novel, and there's a nice element of female friendship as well as romance that comes into this book. So another one that I recommend. I just received the latest Slightly Foxed magazine, the summer edition, in the post. So this is definitely something that I'll be curling up with and enjoying reading. I always love the latest Slightly Foxed magazine. It's a brilliant magazine for anyone who loves books. Reading this, I always discover new books or I note down books that I would like to get to and read. So it's just such a great literary magazine. And I was also very kindly sent their newest release, because as well as publishing their literary magazine, Slightly Foxed also republish memoirs, and their latest is Toast by Nigel Slater. And I love this Slightly Foxed edition of it with a sort of burnt orange cover. I think that's gorgeous. I adore Nigel Slater's writing, so it's just very special to have such a nice edition of his memoir. So I was thrilled with that. Then a few books that I've ordered for myself. This one, The Heat of the Day by Elizabeth Bowen. I love this edition published by Hatchards. I think it's just gorgeous. This is a World War II novel. I've never actually read this one though, so I'm really looking forward to reading this soon because it's meant to be so good and I'm so interested in the World War II era. So this will be a great read. Then I'm a huge fan of the Professor Dr. von Eaglefeld books by Alexander McCall Smith, and I had the latest on pre-order, so this just arrived recently. It's The Lost Language of Oysters. And I can't wait to read this. I just find this series so fun. I studied linguistics in my undergraduate degree, and Dr. von Eaglefeld is a linguistics professor, and there are some kind of in-jokes or jokes you maybe especially appreciate if you've done linguistics. But there's just so much humour in this book. It's so funny, in the series, I should say. So I'm really looking forward to reading the latest. So this will be a treat. And then I always love sort of non-fiction books or memoirs about gardening, about wildlife. So I got this book, which is also fairly new out, A Wilder Way by Poppy Okocha, How Gardens Grow Us. And Poppy has her own garden in Devon. So this book sort of guides you through the year in her garden. And it just sounds like the type of book that I really enjoy. So I was really happy to get this one as well. And then I was thrilled to be sent one of the latest Manderley Press titles, which is Sunhorse Moonhorse by Rosemary Sutcliffe. I love Rosemary Sutcliffe. She wrote so many incredible historical novels for children, but adults can really appreciate them too because they're so well written and engaging. Manderley Press have also published The Armourer's House by Rosemary Sutcliffe. I've spoken about this book a lot on my channel in the past because I just loved it. So I was very excited that Manderley Press are doing another Rosemary Sutcliffe title. This isn't one that I've read before, but it sounds really interesting. It's set in Iron Age Britain, and Manderley Press always choose books that kind of focus on a particular location, and this is about the White Horse on the Berkshire Downs in Uffington, precisely. So I think this will be a really interesting read, so I was thrilled to get that. And then I couldn't resist this special edition of The Forgotten Garden by Kate Morton. I love Kate Morton's novels. It's been a very long time since I read The Forgotten Garden, so this would be a good excuse to read it again. And I just thought this new edition of the book is really gorgeous, so I couldn't resist that. And then a couple more books that I couldn't resist either. One is the latest novel by Jill Hornby. I've enjoyed her previous Jane Austen kind of related novels, Miss Austen, and the new BBC TV series of that I thought was really good. And then also Godmersham Park, and then the latest is The Elopement. So I'm excited to get to this too, especially as I think Cassandra Austen features again in this one. So that's exciting. And then The Postal Paths, Rediscovering Britain's Forgotten Trails and the People Who Walked Them by Alan Cleaver. This just sounded really interesting. It says, postal paths span the length and breadth of Britain, from the furthermost corners of the Outer Hebrides to the isolated communities clinging to the cliffs in southeast Cornwall. For over 200 years, postmen and women have delivered post to homes across Britain on foot, no matter how remote. A chance remark by a farmer about a postman's path led Alan Cleaver on a quest to discover more about this network of lanes, shortcuts, and footpaths in the British landscape. From the rolling fells of Cumbria to Kent's shingle coast, he walked in the footsteps of 20th century posties. What he found through conversation and painstaking research was not just beautiful scenery, it was an incredible, forgotten slice of social history. The tales and toil of rural postmen and women trudging down lanes, over fields, and even across rivers to make sure the post always came on time. So that just sounds fascinating to me, and I can't wait to get to this book. So another one that I'm very eager to read. But do let me know what books you've been reading lately, or any books on your to-be-read pile that you're especially excited to get to, because I'd love to know. I'll be seeing you again soon. I'm currently working out, trying a few different things for my channel, and maybe a few little changes to my channel as well. So just please bear with me whilst I'm working a few things out right now. But I'll see you again soon, and I hope you're having a wonderful start to June. Goodbye.